When I stood there watching my son exchange vows with the love of his life, surrounded by our closest family and friends, I felt a joy so profound it's hard to put into words. It was a day bursting with laughter, happy tears, and the gentle sense that, for once, everything was just as it should be. The flowers were beautiful, the music was perfect, and every face I saw beamed with warmth. In those precious moments it struck me more deeply than ever that this day was entirely theirs, a celebration of two hearts uniting, of families coming together, of promises whispered and dreamed, set into motion. It was not, nor should it ever have been, about money. You see, just weeks before the wedding, I had inherited a staggering $7 million from an old family trust. It was a revelation that shook me to my core, not simply because of the amount, but because of all the changes it threatened to bring. I remember sitting alone with that letter in my hands, the official seal still pressed into the heavy paper, feeling the weight of it settle over me. The possibilities, the responsibilities, and yes, the fears, came all at once. My mind swirled with questions. How would this affect my relationships? Would people begin to look at me differently? Would it somehow taint the way I viewed them? I knew immediately that this was not news I wanted to drop into the delicate joy of my son's wedding. So I made a quiet promise to myself that I would keep this information close to my heart, at least for a while. I wouldn't breathe a word of it, not to my son, not to my daughter-in-law, not even to my closest friends. That might seem strange to some, perhaps even dishonest, but I felt it was the only way to ensure that this day, their day, remained about the love we had gathered to celebrate. I didn't want the shine in my son's eyes as he danced with his bride to have even a flicker of distraction. I didn't want anyone's toasts or conversations to drift into speculation about my windfall or what I might do with it. I wanted every smile, every heartfelt hug, to be entirely about them. It's remarkable how quickly money can slip its way into the heart of relationships. Even the purest bonds can become strained by unspoken expectations, envy, or subtle resentments. That's not what I wanted for my family, especially not on such a pivotal day. I wanted my gift to them to be unencumbered by any talk of wealth. My wholehearted attention, my genuine delight in their union, my unwavering support as they began this new chapter. And that, I believe, was the greatest gift I could have offered. Throughout the reception, as I watched my son steal kisses from his new wife, as we laughed over old family stories and posed for photos that will line our walls for decades to come, I was grateful, truly grateful, that I had chosen to stay silent. The richness of that day had nothing to do with bank accounts or investments. It lived in the sparkle of my son's eyes when he looked at his bride, in the warm embrace of old friends, in the tearful pride of grandparents seeing the next generation step forward. Had I revealed my inheritance then, even with the best intentions, I fear it would have cast a long, unnecessary shadow. It might have become a topic of curiosity, of whispered conversations, of assumptions about future gifts or handouts. Instead, by holding back, I preserved the simple, profound beauty of that day. And as I left the venue that evening, hand in hand with my own memories, I knew without question that silence had been the right choice. Looking back on that day, I'm more convinced than ever that staying quiet was a small act of wisdom that spared us all a host of awkward, even painful moments. Weddings, as joyful as they are, already carry a delicate undercurrent of comparison. Who wore what? Who gave what gift? Who sat at which table? Emotions can run high, and people can become sensitive without even realizing it. Imagine if, on top of all that, it had come out that I had just inherited $7 million. Even if no one said a word out loud, I have no doubt it would have changed the air in the room, and not for the better. I can picture how it might have gone. Someone would have overheard a snippet of conversation, or perhaps I'd have made an offhand comment about settling some financial matters, and soon whispers would have threaded their way through the crowd. Guests might have looked at me differently, their warm smiles tinged with curiosity or even suspicion. Some might have wondered why I hadn't paid for a bigger venue or more lavish decorations, or why I hadn't offered to cover the honeymoon or buy the couple a house. Others might have felt a twinge of envy, even if they didn't want to admit it, that subtle human instinct to measure their own lives against the fortune, quite literally, that had just landed in mine, and it wouldn't have stopped there. People talk. News like that doesn't stay contained within a reception hall or among the family seated at one round table. It finds its way into coffee shop gossip, into casual phone calls, into the quiet moments when people think about what they don't have. Some might have started to look at me less like a mother of the groom and more like a bank. I know that sounds harsh, but wealth has a way of stirring up feelings we don't always like to acknowledge: jealousy, insecurity, even greed. Not because people are bad, but because money changes the perceived balance in relationships. Then there's the other side of it, the awkwardness that can slip into friendships and family bonds. Perhaps a cousin who once felt perfectly comfortable inviting me over for a potluck would suddenly wonder if her humble hospitality was good enough. Maybe old friends would hesitate before asking me to join a simple vacation rental, afraid I might judge their budgets. Even subtle shifts in how people spoke to me, overly polite, overly cautious, would have driven a wedge between us, all because a figure on a piece of paper was now stuck in everyone's heads, overshadowing years of trust and shared experiences. And what about my son and his new wife? What should have been a time of carefree newlywed joy could have easily become clouded by outside speculation. People might have questioned whether they'd soon receive a large gift, or if I planned to buy them a house outright. Those whispers, those sidelong glances, could have put pressure on their marriage before it even found its footing. Instead of focusing on building their own dreams, they might have started to field quiet questions or assumptions about when my money would become theirs. I'm thankful I didn't let any of that take root. By staying silent, I allowed the day to be what it was always meant to be, a celebration of two people who love each other, supported by family and friends who care for them without ulterior motives or distracted thoughts. There were no awkward pauses, no forced smiles hiding uncomfortable questions, just genuine laughter and honest happiness. And that, to me, was worth more than any sum of money I could ever disclose. One of the deepest reasons I chose to keep my inheritance to myself that day was to protect the relationships that mean the most to me. Family ties are precious, and I've seen firsthand how quickly they can unravel when money becomes part of the conversation. I didn't want to risk watching lifelong bonds fray under the weight of expectation, discomfort, or silent resentment. In fact, the thought of it troubled me more than I can express. I've always believed that love, loyalty, and shared memories are the real currency of family, far more enduring than any bank balance. I knew that if I had stood up at my son's wedding and made some grand announcement, or even let the news slip casually during dinner, everything could have changed in an instant. Not just in the obvious ways, people congratulating me, perhaps a few joking remarks about the rich one in the family, but in the subtle, corrosive ways that alter how we see one another. It's those quiet shifts that worried me most. Would my siblings still invite me over for relaxed Sunday lunches, or would they start to feel embarrassed by their simpler lives? Would my nieces and nephews look at me as an aunt they could confide in, or as someone they might need to impress or gently petition for help down the line? I've watched enough families struggle under the strain of inheritances, gifts, and financial inequalities to know how quickly affection can get tangled up with unspoken calculations. Cousins stop speaking, sisters retreat into polite distance, old friends pull back, worried that any gathering will end in uncomfortable requests or obligations. Even the purest relationships can turn fragile when money is placed in the middle of them, like a sharp stone that bruises every step you take together. That's not the kind of life I wanted for myself or the people I care about. I also wanted to make sure my son and his new wife began their marriage with the freedom to shape their own path without interference or inflated hopes. Had people known about my inheritance, it might have planted dangerous seeds. Would they wonder if I was planning to buy the couple a lavish home or pay off their debts? Worse still, would they have assumed my son would never need to work hard or strive for anything, because everything was waiting on my doorstep? I couldn't bear the idea of their marriage being quietly dismissed as cushioned by my fortune, or of anyone doubting their efforts and achievements. They deserved to start their life together on their own terms, building dreams with their own hands and feeling the pride that comes with it. By keeping my silence, I gave my loved ones and myself the gift of continuing exactly as we always had. Our laughter remained honest, our conversations unclouded by awkward undercurrents, our hugs warm and uncomplicated. No one felt pressured to measure up or awkward about their own circumstances. No one wondered if they needed to watch their words around me. They could simply be themselves just as I could be too, and that to me was a priceless thing to protect. As I watched my family dance late into the evening, arms linked, faces flushed with happiness, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. The closeness we shared that day was pure, untouched by any knowledge that might have stirred envy or unease. It was a reminder of what truly matters, not the size of any inheritance, but the strength of the love that holds us all together. In the weeks leading up to my son's wedding, after the inheritance became my quiet reality, I found myself lying awake many nights, just staring at the ceiling, trying to wrap my mind around what this would mean for my life. $7 million isn't the sort of windfall you simply slot into your budget. It changes everything. And that's exactly why I felt, deep in my gut, that blurting it out or even letting it slip during the wedding festivities would have been reckless. I needed time, real time, to think, to process, to figure out what kind of future I wanted to shape with this gift and how to handle it responsibly, not only for myself, but for my family. Truthfully, when that official letter first arrived, I was overwhelmed. My initial reaction wasn't even joy. It was more like a tidal wave of questions. Should I invest? Should I give large sums to my children right away? Should I set up trusts, donate to causes, redo my entire will? The pressure was immense. I also knew that any sudden decision made without calm reflection could have long-lasting consequences, not just financially, but emotionally and relationally. Money given too soon, without thought, can complicate lives instead of enhancing them, and money announced too quickly can change how every future conversation feels. I didn't want that weight hanging over such an important day. I realized that by staying silent, I was giving myself exactly what I needed most, the gift of time. Time to breathe, to meet with financial advisors, to ask hard questions and learn things I'd never thought I'd need to know. Time to talk quietly, privately, with trusted confidants who wouldn't rush me or pressure me into grand gestures. Time to figure out how to use this inheritance wisely, so that one day it could be a blessing, not a burden or a source of division. Had I announced it at the wedding, or even hinted at it in those bubbly, emotional moments when everyone's guard was down, I would have felt trapped. Once people know, there's no taking it back. it becomes part of every interaction. I would have instantly faced 1,000 suggestions, opinions, perhaps even direct requests, long before I'd had the chance to find my own footing. And what if, in my shock or excitement, I'd made a promise on a whim, offered to buy someone a house, pay off a debt, fund a venture, just because the champagne was flowing and hearts were tender? Those are big decisions, ones that deserve more than a moment's thrill. Instead, I gave myself permission to move slowly, to watch the wedding unfold without distraction, soaking in my son's smile and the quiet joy of seeing him start his own family. I could laugh and dance and share stories without a single undercurrent of awkwardness or expectation. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of my own heart, I was building a careful plan for how to honor this inheritance, not as a sudden windfall to throw around, but as a resource to protect, grow, and eventually pass on in ways that felt thoughtful and fair. This silence, far from being a deceit, was actually a profound act of love and respect. Love for my son and his new wife, who deserved to begin their married life with the focus fully on them. Love for the rest of my family, who could continue to relate to me exactly as they always had. And respect for myself, allowing me the grace of a measured pace, so I could make decisions that aligned with my values instead of being swept up in impulse or outside pressure. As I stood there that evening, watching the newlyweds share their first dance, I felt certain that this quiet choice was the right one, not just for the wedding, but for every chapter that would follow. Another reason I chose to keep my inheritance to myself, one that mattered to me more than I can fully explain, was the chance it gave me to see who truly valued me for who I am, not for what I suddenly possessed. There's something deeply comforting in knowing that the people around you love you simply because you're you, unadorned by wealth or status or anything that might distort the purity of those relationships. Before all of this, I never questioned the sincerity of my family or friends, but once that inheritance landed in my lap, I couldn't help but wonder how such news might shift even the most well-meaning hearts. I've witnessed it before, how money, or even the perception of money, can quietly change people. Not always in overt ways. Sometimes it's just a slight difference in tone, a new carefulness in how they speak, a cautious hesitance that wasn't there before. Other times it's more obvious, people reaching out more often, eager to reconnect, peppering conversations with hints about their financial struggles or dreams they can't quite fund. It's human nature, I suppose. Most people don't even realize they're doing it. But I didn't want to invite that subtle shift into my world, not at such a pivotal time for my family. By staying silent at my son's wedding, I allowed myself to continue experiencing my relationships in their most authentic form. The hugs I received that day were warm and heartfelt, untouched by any thoughts of how my new fortune might benefit someone. The laughter we shared over old stories was genuine, free of any undercurrents or hidden hopes. I could look into the faces of my siblings, my cousins, my lifelong friends, and feel completely certain that their joy in being there with me was rooted in love and shared history, not tinged by a sudden awareness of dollar signs. Even more importantly, it gave me space to observe how people continued to treat me in the days and weeks that followed. There was no sudden uptick in invitations that felt forced, no outpouring of attention that seemed strangely timed. No one started telling me long tales of financial hardship in the hopes I might offer to help. Everyone just carried on as before, which was exactly what I needed. It confirmed for me that my bonds were real, that the people closest to me valued my companionship and not my bank account. This period of quiet also gave me a clearer picture of who in my life consistently offered support, and who might have drifted for reasons entirely unrelated to money. Watching people engage with me in this completely unguarded way, without knowing about my inheritance, strengthened my trust in them. It made me feel safe, not because they were excluded from the truth, but because their love for me stood on its own. That's an incredibly precious thing, something I wouldn't trade for all the wealth in the world. And in some ways, it deepened my appreciation for these relationships even more. Knowing that the joy we shared at my son's wedding was entirely about him, about the start of his new life, without anyone subconsciously calculating how my fortune might play into theirs, was relief beyond words. It left the memories of that day sparkling, unclouded by even the faintest question of motive. Someday, when the time is right and the dust has fully settled, I'll share my plans, and perhaps even some of this wealth with the people I love most. But by staying silent then, I preserved something beautiful, the chance to see and trust that I am cherished for who I am, not what I have. And that simple certainty, to me, is worth more than any inheritance. As I stand here now, reflecting on everything that's happened since my son's wedding day, I find myself filled with an overwhelming sense of gratitude that I chose to keep my inheritance private. It might sound strange to say I'm grateful for my own silence, but that's exactly what it is, a deep thankfulness that I didn't let impulse, excitement, or even misplaced generosity lead me to speak out before I was ready. In doing so, I preserved not only the spirit of that beautiful day, but also the delicate bonds that tie our family together. In the flurry of wedding preparations, with emotions running high and hearts laid bare, it would have been so easy to slip, to pull someone aside and confide in them, or to let the news spill out in a moment of shared joy. I'm someone who loves transparency, who believes that honesty is the cornerstone of trust, so holding back wasn't entirely natural for me. But I came to understand that there are moments when silence is the most loving, respectful choice we can make. This was one of them. Had I spoken up then, I believe it would have complicated everything. It would have overshadowed the true meaning of the day, the vows my son and his bride exchanged, the tears we all shed watching their first dance, the laughter that rang out as old friends reunited. Instead, by choosing to say nothing, I allowed all of us to remain rooted in what mattered most: love, connection, and the simple, profound joy of witnessing two people begin a life together. It kept the day pure, untouched by any swirling questions of what the future might hold for me financially, or what obligations might arise. Since then, I've found myself even more appreciative of this decision. The truth is, once people know something like this, there's no turning back. You can't unsay it or pull it quietly back into your chest. It becomes part of the story everyone tells about you, part of how they frame your place in their world. By keeping my silence, I granted myself a gentle buffer of time to adjust to this new reality, to figure out how I wanted to handle it, and to decide what my priorities would be without the noise of other opinions clouding my thoughts. More than anything, I'm grateful for the peace it has brought. Our family gatherings since then have been just as warm, just as unself-conscious as they've always been. We talk about work, about vacations, about little milestones and everyday annoyances. No one tiptoes around me. No one subtly fishes for my plans or tries to guess how much I might give away. And I can look around the room, whether it's over a Sunday meal or during a holiday toast, and know with absolute certainty that we are all here for the right reasons, that our love for one another is based on history, trust, and genuine affection, not on financial possibilities. It's also given me space to dream quietly about how I might use this gift to bless others in the future, in ways that feel thoughtful and true to my values. Maybe someday I will help pay for college educations or support a family member in starting a business. or contribute to causes that are close to my heart. But I will do so on my own terms, at a time when I've fully mapped out how to ensure it's a source of lasting good, not confusion or unintended hurt. When I think back to that wedding day, to the music, the flowers, the laughter that wrapped around us like a soft shawl, I'm profoundly thankful that nothing intruded on that tender, perfect moment. By keeping my silence, I protected not just the memories of that day, but the spirit of our family itself. And in the quiet spaces of my heart, I know that was the wisest choice I could have ever made. Revenge stories, Reddit revenge stories, family revenge stories, Reddit family stories, betrayal stories, Reddit family drama stories. Relationship stories, ultimate revenge, top revenge stories, dramatic family stories, shocking betrayal, Reddit confessions, inheritance stories, at the will reading, unexpected will twist, siblings, betrayal, parents' last wish, will reading drama, revenge plot, family secrets, hidden fortune, emotional family stories, powerful revenge, #1 revenge story, viral Reddit story, unforgettable family drama, dramatic story time, Reddit top stories.